Hello, and welcome to the Biological Resources Information Program for the Hospital Road Bridge Low Water Crossing Replacement Project. This training has 4 broad objectives. Hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you'll be familiar with all 4 of these points. First, we're going to cover the definition and implications of take. Then we'll move on to what your responsibilities are if you encounter a regulated species. We'll have a brief introduction to the protected species associated with this project, and then we'll go over some general mitigation measures that need to be followed in order to prevent any incidents of take. We'd like to emphasize that this training is meant to supplement, not replace the training information handouts that you should have received before watching this video. If you have not received a training pamphlet or booklet, please request one from your supervisor or the on-site alluvian biologist. Let's start by discussing take. Take is a broadly defined term. Under the Federal Endangered Species Act, take means to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, or collect, or to attempt to engage in any such conduct. Penalties for take will vary from species to species. However, any individual found to be committing unsanctioned take may be dealt hefty fines and in some cases up to a year in jail time. These penalties are assessed for each instance of unsanctioned take. So what should you do if you encounter a regulated species on the project? The very first thing you should do is ensure that you do not touch or approach the animal. You should then immediately suspend work within the area the animal was found, especially if this work would result in take. Your next step is to notify your supervisor or the on-site biologist. If a biologist is not on site, please contact Gennaro Lockhart at the number listed on the slide and in your training materials. Unless otherwise noted in your training materials, a 100-foot no-work buffer will need to be established around the species of concern until it either moves off the project site of its own volition or until permission is received from regulatory agencies to reduce or eliminate the no-work buffer. The next couple slides will give you a brief overview of all the listed species and regulated species that occur on this project site. The San Joaquin kit fox is a small fox measuring about 32 inches in length. It is one of 8 recognized subspecies of kit fox, the smallest known canid. Individuals usually exhibit gray to buff fur along their backs, sides, and tails, as well as white fur along their bellies. Kit foxes may be distinguished from other fox species by their relatively diminutive size and their overlarge ears. This subspecies can be found throughout the arid regions of Southern California. It prefers to inhabit annual grasslands with scattered shrubs and scrub utilizing complex burrow systems for shelter. Kit foxes excavate burrows in loose soil and may construct up to 36 entrances for a single den. A single kit fox may utilize between 3 to 26 such dens. San Joaquin kit foxes reach breeding age at approximately 2 years of age. Pups are born in February through May. Females nurse broods of 1 to 7 pups until they have weaned in approximately 4 to 5 months. The American badger is a flat-bodied, short-legged mammal weighing up to 24 pounds. Its feet are equipped with webbed toes and 1.5-inch claws to aid in digging burrows. It bears silvery gray fur over most of its body with black fur on its legs and patterning of black and white fur across its face. This species is found throughout the state of California in habitats that provide pliable soils and shrub-like vegetation. Badgers are nocturnal, taking refuge in burrows for the majority of the day. They frequently repurpose abandoned burrows for shelter but will also dig their own. This species is carnivorous, feeding on a variety of rodents throughout the year. Females give birth to litters of 2 to 3 pups. The burrowing owl is a small brown, mottled owl standing 7 to 9 inches in height. True to its name, the burrowing owl nests in a hole in the ground. Although it is quite willing to dig its own burrow, it often uses one already provided by prairie dogs, skunks, ground squirrels, or tortoises. Burrowing owls require habitat with 3 basic attributes: open, well-drained terrain, short, sparse vegetation, and underground burrows. During the breeding season, they may also need enough permanent cover and taller vegetation within their foraging range to provide them with sufficient prey. Burrowing owls occupy grasslands, deserts, sagebrush, scrub, agricultural areas including pastures and untilled margins of cropland, earthen levees and berms, coastal uplands, and urban vacant lots, as well as the margins of airports, golf courses, and roads. Breeding in California can start as early as January and continues through September. The peak for breeding is April. Burrowing owls can lay 1 to 11 eggs. The young hatch in about 30 days and fledge at 44 days. They will remain at the burrow for some time, foraging at night with the adults. In Northern California, owls migrate south during September and October. The California horned lark is a small songbird measuring 6 to 8 inches in length. Their plumage is light brown on the back with a lighter belly. Adults have a black eye mask, chest bands, and head stripes, while the rest of the face is either yellow or white. Males differentiate themselves from females with more pronounced facial plumage as well as horns on either side of their head that may be raised or lowered during the breeding season. Hornlarks can be found in many of the lowlands of California and inhabit areas with low grasses and or bare ground. This species is a ground forager, feeding on a combination of seeds and insects. Hornlarks breed from March through July, building a grass-lined nest cup in a natural depression on the ground. Females incubate 2 to 5 eggs for a period of 10 to 14 days. Nestlings fledge in 9 to 12 days and are capable of flight 3 to 5 days later. A variety of bird species have been found nesting in or immediately adjacent to Caltrans right-of-ways. Nest sites are often placed in crevices, cavities, seams, or weep holes within bridges. Other nests are constructed in open vertical cement surfaces on bridges. The species that utilize man-made structures as nest sites tend to be more tolerant of urban conditions, but can nonetheless be sufficiently disturbed during construction or maintenance activities to cause nest abandonment or inattentiveness, resulting in the death or loss of eggs or juveniles. Incubation and brood rearing require approximately 4 to 5 weeks for smaller birds, but can take up to 12 weeks for larger birds. The San Joaquin coachwhip is a slender, fast-moving snake with smooth scales, a large head and eyes, a thin neck, and a long, thin tail. Adults typically measure in length from 33 to 66 inches and are variably colored within a range of tan, olive, and yellow. The patterning of scales along the thin tails of coachwhips give them the appearance of braided whips. This snake is non-venomous, but will react aggressively to perceived threats or handling. This subspecies is frequently observed during the day and will scavenge for roadkill along highways and roads. San Joaquin coachwhips prefer habitats with little to no cover and or vegetation, as they prefer few impediments to their movement. They will take shelter under shrubs, in rodent burrows, or under nearby surface objects. Eggs are laid midsummer in clutches of 5 to 20. The western pond turtle is a medium-sized dark brown, olive brown, or blackish turtle measuring 3.5 to 8.5 inches in shell length. This species can be identified from the lines and spots that radiate from the center of the scutes. Males tend to have a light throat with no markings and a relatively flat shell, while females exhibit dark markings around the throat and have a noticeably taller shell. They typically inhabit ponds and creeks, hibernating underwater for several months during the winter. Western pond turtles reach breeding at about 8 to 10 years of age. Breeding takes place in April and May. Females climb onto land to dig their nest along the water margin. Clutch size ranges from 2 to 11 eggs, with a gestation period of 80 to 100 days. Turtle hatchlings remain in the nest chamber until the following spring before emerging to feed. The western spadefoot toad is a small, relatively smooth-skinned toad with cat-like eyes and a sharp-edged spade on each rear foot. Individuals are dark brown to green, often bearing 4 irregular dorsal stripes. Western spadefoots can be found throughout the Central Valley and along the coast south of Point Conception to the Mexican border. This species requires seasonal pools and drainages for reproduction. Breeding occurs from January to May, depending on rainfall and other environmental conditions. Females lay between 10 to 40 eggs on vegetation and detritus in ephemeral pools and streams, and may lay up to 500 eggs in one season. California red-legged frog is a true frog with characteristic smooth skin and a narrow waist. Adults may attain a length of 8 centimeters. Individuals have dark facial masks and single characteristic light stripes along their jawlines. Their skin is brown or reddish-brown. The species has a readily apparent dorsolateral fold. This species requires still waters for breeding and is rarely found at any great distance from aquatic breeding sites. Ponds, marshes, or stream pools are essential for the species. Moreover, this species has a clear preference for thickly vegetated shorelines, laying its eggs at or near the water's edge. The California tiger salamander is a large salamander species identifiable by the white-yellow bars that pattern its dorsal surface. They emerge from burrows in early fall and winter during nights of high humidity or rain, but may be active at other times within the burrow system. Breeding starts in November, with adults migrating long distances in search of suitable breeding sites. Females may lay as many as 1,300 eggs, which they then attach to either vegetation or objects on the pond bottom near the pond edge. Individuals reach sexual maturity at 4 to 5 years. Young hatch in 10 to 14 days and metamorphose 60 to 94 days after eggs hatch. Juveniles leave their breeding pond immediately after metamorphosis. Steelhead is an anadromous Pacific trout species, typically 19 to 33 inches in length. The breeding coloration of this species looks like that of the coho salmon. However, steelhead males do not develop the hook-shaped mouth as coho salmon do. Steelhead are also noticeably slimmer than other salmonids. Steelhead are anadromous, born in freshwater, migrating to the ocean and returning as mature adults to their natal streams to spawn. Most breeding adults die shortly after spawning, although 9% of individuals are repeat spawners. Eggs are deposited within gravel beds and streams with fast-flowing water. Depending on water temperature, eggs hatch after 21 to 28 days. Young fry remain for up to 3 years in streams and lakes before migrating to the ocean to complete the majority of their growth. Now, we'll go over some additional key species protection measures for this project. These slides won't comprise an exhaustive list of necessary protective measures, but they should provide you with a good idea of what's expected. Please refer to your training booklet for a comprehensive list of species protection measures. There are several general protective measures that need to be followed on this project. I'll go over these quickly, but you should review these measures in your training materials. First of all wildlife should be allowed to leave the job site unharmed. This includes any animals that don't carry state or federal protections. To prevent wildlife entrapment on this project, all excavations need to be covered at the end of each workday. If covering an excavation is not practical, earthen or wooden escape ramps need to be installed. Additionally, all litter, construction debris, and food-related waste generated on the site need to be contained in sealed trash containers and removed from the construction area daily. These containers need to be removed from the site daily. Containing food waste is especially important as these items tend to attract wildlife, which could ultimately cause project delays. During construction operations, stockpiling of construction materials, portable equipment, vehicles, and supplies need to be restricted to the designated construction staging areas. The same goes for access roads into and out of the work area. Finally, restrict the disturbance of vegetation outside the work area. If we find active dens, nests, or burrows for any regulated species mentioned in the previous slides, we'll need to set up a protective no-work buffer around it until it can be demonstrated that the pups or chicks have fledged and the site is no longer active. Depending on the species, different radii will apply. San Joaquin kit fox pup in dens, burrowing owl nests, and nesting raptors will all require a 500-foot buffer. For all remaining non-raptor bird species, a 250-foot buffer is required. Additionally, all the previously covered mammal, reptile, amphibian, and fish species discussed in the previous slides require a 100-foot no-work buffer. We'll finish up here with some important takeaways from this presentation. Perhaps the most important takeaway is remembering what your responsibilities are if you see a regulated species within the project site. Don't touch or approach regulated wildlife and immediately report encounters to your supervisor or the on-site biologist. Keep your training materials somewhere you can readily access them. If an animal wanders onto the construction site and you're unsure whether it's cause for concern, your booklets contain the necessary contact information and procedures to follow in order to protect yourself and your company. It's important to remember that you and your company are wholly responsible for the following measures in this training video and its associated training materials as well as the permits and specifications for this project. So please revisit this video and your training materials as needed. This concludes the Biological Resources Information Training video. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions about what's been covered in this presentation or your training materials, please direct them to your on-site alluvian biologist.